Clara and I met on a blind date. For me, it was love at first sight, and we were married in a flash. I always knew she had a first love, a perfect, unattainable figure from her past. She called her white moonlight. But I didn't care. I was utterly, hopelessly in love with her. So when I discovered she planned to give him my entire life savings, I didn't hesitate to give her exactly what she wanted. But the moment her old flame got the money, he married someone else. Suddenly, she was the other woman, and only then did she begin to remember the good things about me. I watched Clara as she stood before me, dressed in a pure white sundress. The time had come. She had styled herself just as she had on our first meeting, with a touch of light makeup, her fingers nervously toying with a strand of her hair. For a moment, I was captivated, and I walked toward her. "Clara, you look so beautiful." The sound of my voice made her face harden. "Who said you could call me that?" "The soup on the table. Drink it." I glanced at the bowl of green bean soup. Its color was slightly off, a murky testament to the plan she had set in motion. It was laced with a lethal dose of sleeping pills. All I had to do was drink it, and she could stage the scene to look like a suicide. Even knowing this, I drank it without a second thought. What she didn't know was that my colleagues, my fellow delivery drivers, had been calling me for days. They'd heard whispers, strange stories, and they warned me to watch out, that Clara might be unstable, that she might even harm herself. But I knew she wouldn't. Her plan wasn't for her to die, but for me. And if that was what she truly wanted, I would give it to her. A month ago, I started noticing her furtive phone calls with him, her white moonlight, Julian. His voice was a smooth poison, manipulating her, convincing her to fund his new business venture. Once he was successful, he promised he would persuade his parents to let them marry. I knew about him from the day we met. I knew that for him, she had terminated 6 pregnancies, a toll that had left her unable to ever have children. But I was so taken with her that it didn't matter. I would have loved her enough for a lifetime, even without a family. She, however, looked down on me. I worked 20 hours a day, delivering food across the city, handing over every cent I earned just to keep her by my side. Still, she was convinced I was hiding money from her, and so she had resorted to this. But I loved her. Even when her eyes filled with disdain, I couldn't bring myself to hurt her. "Clara," I said, my voice steady. "Whatever you want, I'll give it to you." She saw the empty bowl and raised an eyebrow. "Oh, if I told you to die right now, would you do it?" It was the first time I had ever seen my own reflection in her eyes. I didn't hesitate. "Of course. For you, Clara, I would do anything." My voice was firm, an oath. She waved a dismissive hand. "Fine. You said it. Now you can get lost." She stood, the fabric of her dress swirling around her. She picked up the empty bowl and turned to leave. I watched her go, and for a fleeting moment, she was as perfect as the day I first saw her. I reached out and grabbed her arm. "Clara, I drank the pills. I can die for you, but Julian, he's not a good man." For a split second, panic flashed across her face. Her plan was exposed. But she had never taken me seriously, and that arrogance quickly returned. "What gives you the right to talk about Julian? And stop calling me your wife. Are you deaf?" I understood her urgency to sever our connection. But she was so naive. 6 times she had sacrificed a part of herself for him, and still, he wouldn't marry her. What made her think this time would be any different? "Clara, you're too trusting," I tried to warn her. "No one else will ever let you order them around the way I do. You have to be careful. He's probably found some rich girl and just needs the cash to seal the deal." But my words were lost on her. Her impatience boiled over. "You're nothing. Marrying you was like planting a beautiful flower in a pile of filth." Even her anger was adorable to me. But the bowl was evidence. It had to be destroyed. I reached for it, but a wave of dizziness washed over me. My legs gave out, and the world went dark as I collapsed to the floor. Clara didn't spare me a second glance. She pulled out her phone, a sweet, radiant smile spreading across her face. I knew exactly who she was talking to. Seeing her look so happy, I couldn't bring myself to say another word. My consciousness was fading, but with a final surge of effort, I pulled a folded paper from my pocket. "This is my medical report," I rasped. "If the police come, tell them it was suicide, and delete your purchase history." I knew it wasn't a perfect plan, but it was the best I could do for her. She snatched the paper from my hand, her eyes scanning the diagnosis, severe depression. She looked at me with disgust. "You're pathetic. A sick man like you had the nerve to marry me? You owe me damages for my emotional distress." Her words were sharp, accusatory. It never once occurred to her to wonder why I might have been so broken. But seeing her so full of life, so vibrant in her. Cruelty. All I felt was a strange sense of peace. If she could be this fierce with me, I thought, then maybe she wouldn't be completely crushed by Julian. I could no longer form words, so I just looked at her, pouring all my remaining love into that final gaze. She was relentless. The money. Where's my compensation? I had planned to wait, to let her discover the $50,000 I had secretly set aside for her in a separate account. But she was impatient. I struggled to speak. In your vanity, a gift. I wanted to warn her one last time about Julian, but the darkness finally consumed me. She didn't even check if I was still breathing. The moment she was sure I was gone, she dialed Julian's number, her voice soaring. Darling, it's done, just like you said. It's perfect, no problems at all. Can you marry me now? It was a soft, girlish tone I had never heard before. How I wished I could have seen her smile one last time. Then, I heard Julian's voice from the other end, cold and impatient. Are you sure you cleaned everything up? No loose ends, understand? Clara was completely obedient with him. Yes, of course, she promised, walking back over to my body. She gave me a firm kick, and when my arm fell limply to my side, a triumphant smile spread across her face. I never knew she hated me that much. A short while later, Julian arrived. He didn't even look at her. The money. Where is it? Give it all to me, and I'll make my family accept you. I watched as Clara, her face a mask of innocent trust, transferred every last penny to him. Darling, she asked softly, when can we get married? Julian ignored her, his eyes glued to his phone screen. Only when he confirmed the transfer was complete did he look up, his expression annoyed. Clara, be patient. I have to get the business started. Once things take off, I'll marry you. I promise. She believed him completely, but still, she reached for his arm, her voice pleading. Darling, what kind of business is it? Let me help. I have nothing else to do now. He had what he wanted. His patience was gone. He yanked his arm away. That's men's business. Stay out of it. He turned and walked away. She felt the sting of his rejection and reached for him again, but he spun around, his brow furrowed in anger. Clara, can you be sensible for once? You haven't even dealt with your husband's body yet. Why would I marry a woman who's still married? With that, he shoved her away and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Years of his manipulation had conditioned her to blame herself. She stood there, head bowed, whispering apologies to an empty room. All of her frustration, all of her rage, she directed at me. She walked over and kicked my body twice more. It's all your fault, she seethed. If it weren't for you, Julian would have married me long ago. Now I have to deal with your body. So disgusting. She had no idea what to do. In her deluded state, she convinced herself that Julian would soon return to handle the mess. She carelessly dragged my body to the side of the room and went to fix her makeup. When she finally tried to call him, the number was disconnected. A cold, mechanical voice met her ears. She stared at her phone in disbelief, dialing again and again, only to get the same result. A sick feeling began to creep into her stomach. She grabbed her purse and rushed to the address Julian had once given her, rehearsing the angry lecture she would deliver. But when she arrived, she wasn't at the grand Oak Haven apartments he had described. She was standing in the middle of a public park. It was a fake address. It was only then that the reality of his deception hit her. In a panic, her fingers instinctively dialed my number. Of course, there was no answer. Hearing the unanswered ring, her fear turned to fury. How dare you not answer my phone? She screamed at the silent device. You must be tired of living. She stood on the street, shouting into the air, oblivious to the group of young men who had started watching her. Before she knew it, a hand was clamped over her mouth, and she was being dragged into a dark alley. In that moment of sheer terror, she realized how vulnerable she was alone. And in that moment, she didn't scream for Julian. She screamed my name. Leo, save me. Please, save me. But I was powerless to help. It was pure chance that a patrolling police officer happened to pass by. He intervened, chasing off the thugs before turning to a shaken Clara. He offered to escort her home. At first, she readily agreed. Then, the memory of my body lying on the living room floor hit her, and she quickly refused. No, thank you, I'm fine. The officer mistook her hesitation for shyness. It's no trouble, miss. I can show you my badge. I just want to make sure you get home safely. Clara had always been susceptible to a man's kindness, especially one as tall and authoritative as a police officer. She eventually relented, chatting nervously with him the whole way. But as they approached her front door, they were greeted by a commotion. Someone's dead. Something happened inside. What's going on? Isn't that the delivery guy? How did he die in his own home? My body had been discovered. Clara was so careless. She hadn't even bothered to lock the door when she left. The officer beside her didn't hesitate. He pushed through the crowd, presented his badge, and began securing the scene. Clara finally understood. She ran inside, frantic, praying her involvement wouldn't be exposed. The officer was already examining my body. Overcome with fear, she threw herself to the floor beside me, grabbing my already cold arm. "Honey, what happened?" she cried, her voice thick with manufactured grief. "Please, don't scare me." I never imagined I would hear her call me that again, especially not under these circumstances. But I could not respond. The officer, seeing her distress, spoke gently. "My condolences for your loss." Clara had never truly loved me. Her initial tears were for the officer's benefit, but then the full weight of Julian's betrayal crashed down on her, and her performance turned into a genuine, soul-shattering sob. The case was straightforward. With my pre-prepared diagnosis of severe depression and the matching medical records, the police didn't dig too deep. They ruled it a suicide and treated Clara with sympathy. After leaving the police station, the emotional and physical toll of the day finally caught up to her. She hadn't eaten or had a drop of water since her world fell apart. Her body, which I had so carefully nursed back to health over the years, gave out. She collapsed on the sidewalk and was rushed to the hospital. Her parents arrived in a storm of fury, their anger directed not at her circumstances, but at me. "Where is that Leo?" her mother shrieked. "You're in the hospital, and he can't even be bothered to show up. What does he do all day? Deliver food? Who else would have him besides our family? Call him right now." "This is unacceptable," her father roared. They had always looked down on me. The only reason they had allowed the marriage was because I was an orphan with no family to interfere and had offered a generous bridal price. Instinctively, Clara joined their chorus of curses, pulling out her phone before remembering. I would never again be at her beck and call. It was then that she recalled my final words as I drank the poisoned soup. She finally understood. What I had told her was true. Besides me, there was no one else in the world she could command. "I can't command him anymore," she whispered, the words catching in her throat. But her family misunderstood. They assumed I had abandoned her, and their insults grew fouler. "Clara, I told you that you married the wrong man," a visiting aunt scoffed. "You remember your old classmate, Victoria? She just married Julian. We're talking a convoy of luxury cars, drone photography. The whole city is talking about it. How could a delivery boy ever compare?" The name Julian struck Clara like a bolt of lightning. She shot up in her hospital bed, ripping the foreline from her arm. Blood trickled down her skin, but she didn't notice. "What did you say?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "Julian got married? How could he? That's impossible." Her reaction stunned the room into silence. The aunt, annoyed by the outburst, defensively pulled out her phone. "See for yourself." It was the event of the season. A 5-star hotel, free food and drinks for everyone. If you weren't in the hospital, we would have all gone. Clara snatched the phone. On the screen, a live-streamed wedding was in full swing. It was the exact fantasy wedding she had described to Julian 100 times, the one he was now sharing with another woman. Her hand trembled as she held the phone, her voice a raw whisper. "Where is this happening?" Sensing her fragile state, her relatives tried to calm her down. "Clara, you need to rest." She threw the phone against the wall. "Where is the wedding?" she screamed. They finally told her the location. Barefoot and still in her hospital gown, she ran out of the room, leaving a trail of bloody footprints behind her. I watched her go. Without me, she couldn't even take care of herself. Once outside, she realized she had nothing, no money, no shoes, no phone. But the wedding was so extravagant that she simply followed the flow of traffic and the distant sound of celebration. When she arrived, the scene was more beautiful and more absurd than she could have imagined. She still couldn't believe he had deceived her so completely. She had to see him, to ask him why. But as she tried to step onto the pristine white carpet leading into the venue, a security guard blocked her path. "Get lost, homeless woman. This isn't a place for begging." The insult, on top of her grief, was too much. She exploded. "What did you say? Open your eyes and look. I am supposed to be the bride at this wedding. Get Julian out here right now." Her shouting attracted a crowd. The wedding was already a public spectacle, and this new drama was irresistible. Did you hear her? She looks completely insane. She must be crazy, desperate for money. Their words stung. She remembered that she had given every penny she had to Julian. She had been funding her own replacement. The realization fueled her rage. She began to lash out, trying to overturn decorative flower stands and tear down banners. But she was no match for the security guards, who quickly tackled her and pinned her to the ground. "Let me go," she shrieked, struggling beneath them. "Julian used my money to pay for all of this. He owes me an explanation. Make him come out here." Just then, Julian appeared. He was immaculate in a tailored tuxedo, his expression as cold and distant as if he were looking at a complete stranger. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Why are you making these baseless accusations? I have never seen you before in my life. If you continue to disrupt my wedding day, I will call the police." Clara stared at the man she once loved, the man she had sacrificed everything for. The coldness in his voice was unreal. In that moment, a beautiful woman in a stunning white gown and a diamond tiara emerged and took his arm. It was Victoria. Julian's face softened as he gently adjusted a stray piece of her hair. Clara's world collapsed. Who was this man? What had she done? Why had she ever given him everything she had? Victoria's voice was sweet but firm. "Darling, let's go back inside. We shouldn't let someone like this ruin our special day." "Of course, my love," Julian cooed. "Today, nothing is more important than you." The sight of their intimacy broke something inside Clara. With a surge of superhuman strength, she broke free from the guards and lunged at Julian, her hand raised to strike him. "Julian," she screamed, her voice raw with pain. "Put your hand on your heart and tell me you don't know me. I had 6 abortions for you. I gave you my entire life savings, and you marry her." Julian dodged the slap. Her words hung in the air, and the crowd murmured, their amusement turning to rapt attention. Even Victoria's smile faltered. "Julian," she asked, "what is going on? Who is she?" But Julian was a master of manipulation. He remained perfectly calm. "Ma'am," he said, addressing Clara as if she were a delusional stranger. "Accusations require evidence. You claim you had 6 procedures for me? Show me the medical records. You claim you gave me all your money? Show me the bank transfers." The crowd immediately turned on Clara. "Yeah, show us the proof. She's clearly lying. A crazy person like her wouldn't have any money to give." Clara froze. The clinics Julian had taken her to were shady, off-the-books operations. There were no records. And the money. He had convinced her to delete all the transfer records to avoid any trouble from me or my friends. Now she understood his true motive. It was too late. She had no proof, no voice. All she could do was stand there, defeated. For a fleeting moment, she wanted to call out for me, the only person who had ever truly been on her side. Tears streamed down her face as she crumpled to the ground, sobbing my name. Julian looked at her with a flicker of disgust. "Guards," he commanded, "get her out of here." He then turned his full attention back to Victoria, his voice dripping with affection. "My love, let's not worry about this lunatic. I would never have anything to do with a woman like that." As the guards dragged her away, Clara could hear the jeers and laughter of the crowd. She had never been so humiliated. She looked back and saw Julian, already whispering sweetly to his new bride, completely unbothered. A cold resolve settled in her heart. She would not let him get away with this. She grabbed a heavy porcelain vase from a nearby pedestal and hurled it with all her might. It struck Julian square on the head. Blood streamed down his face. This was exactly what he had been waiting for. It gave him the perfect excuse. He immediately called the police. "I gave you a chance," he said, his voice laced with false pity. "You brought this on yourself." When the police arrived, they roughly handcuffed her. She struggled, trying to explain that it was all Julian's fault, but without evidence, she was just a hysterical woman who had assaulted the groom at his wedding. Her wrists were raw and bleeding by the time they forced her into the back of the police car. "Julian, you just wait," she screamed through the window. "I will make you pay for this." From inside the car, she saw Julian playing the victim for the police. "Officer, you see, she's threatening me. She ruined the most important day of my life. She must be taught a lesson." The officers who responded were the same ones who had handled my case. One of them recognized her. "Has your husband's situation been taken care of?" he asked gently. "We understand you're going through a lot, but you have to think about the consequences of your actions." The word husband struck her with the force of a physical blow. In that moment, sitting in the back of a police car, she finally understood the meaning of the word. She had been so wrong. She broke down, her cries filling the small space. "Leo, I was wrong. It was all my fault. Please come back. I'll never do it again." Her grief was so intense that the officers were taken aback. "It's not your fault," one said, trying to soothe her. "You need to take care of yourself. Your husband's final arrangements still need to be made." The funeral. She had forgotten. A new sense of purpose cut through her despair. She thanked the officers. She knew that the only reason they were letting her go with a warning was because of what had happened to me. When she returned home, her relatives were waiting, their faces etched with scorn. The video of her meltdown at the wedding had already gone viral. "Clara, have you no shame? You're a married woman, a widow, and you say those disgraceful things. Throwing yourself at another man like that. It's disgusting. Where was Leo? Did he just let you run wild?" Hearing them speak my name with such disrespect, something inside her snapped. "This has nothing to do with any of you," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "Get out." She unlocked the door and walked inside. They followed, still muttering insults, until the foul stench from within hit them. They saw my body, still lying where she had left it, the signs of decay now unmistakable. They fled in horror. Only Clara remained. She walked to my side and knelt down. Gently, as if tending to a sleeping child, she began to clean my body, resting her head on my chest. "My love," she whispered, "I know I was wrong. I'll never do it again, I promise. Please wake up." But I remained cold and silent. Realizing what she had to do, she called a funeral service and instructed them to arrange the most beautiful ceremony money could buy. She then rose to prepare herself, but her legs had gone numb from kneeling. She stumbled, hitting her head sharply on the corner of a table. In the past, she would have cried out for me to help her. Now, she just looked at my still form, her eyes full of a sorrowful tenderness. "Don't worry, my love," she said, her voice soft but determined. "I will make Julian pay." She went to her vanity table, a surface laden with expensive cosmetics. She remembered how I would buy her any brand she casually mentioned, saving for weeks to surprise her. The memory brought fresh tears. As she reached for her makeup, her fingers brushed against an envelope tucked away in a drawer. She recognized my handwriting and collapsed to the floor, clutching it to her chest, her body racked with sobs. I had told her there was a gift for her in the vanity. She hadn't listened. Inside was a letter and a bank card. With trembling hands, she read my words. "Clara, I know marrying me was a disappointment to you. I couldn't give you the life you deserved. But Julian is not a good man. Please, use this to protect yourself. I know you like to spend, so I saved this for you. The pin is your birthday. There's $50,000. It's not much, but it's a safety net. Below is the number for a lawyer. I hope you never have to call him." She clutched the letter, her tears soaking the paper. She saw the lawyer's number and, after a moment's hesitation, dialed. He answered on the first ring. "Miss Clara? Your husband, Leo, retained my services on your behalf. How can I help you?" Hearing my name from a stranger's lips, she choked back a sob and told him everything. "How?" she asked, her voice shaking with rage. "Can I make Julian pay?" The lawyer was unfazed. "Unfortunately, without any hard evidence, you have no legal case." The words were a blow, but Clara was no longer the naive woman she had been. "Is there really no other way?" she pleaded. "Mr. Zhang, how did Leo make it so the police wouldn't suspect me?" There was a pause. He had a documented history of severe depression. Clara understood instantly. She could use the same tactic. The whole city had already seen how insane she had acted at the wedding. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for your advice." "I gave you no advice, Miss Clara," the lawyer replied quickly. "I simply answered your question." Before hanging up, he mentioned that I had first come to his office a month ago, deeply worried about her. She couldn't imagine the pain I must have been in, planning for my own death just to protect her. After the call, she carefully put the letter away. She took the money and hired a private investigator to track Julian and Victoria's every move. Then, she held a magnificent funeral for me, her devotion and grief on full display for all to see. The city buzzed with gossip about the crazy widow. Julian, of course, heard about it. He laughed it off. He never took her seriously. That was his fatal mistake. While he and Victoria were on their honeymoon on a remote private island, Clara abducted them. It was surprisingly easy. Even tied to a chair, Julian was arrogant. "Clara, what the hell is this? You psycho. If you don't let me go, I'll send you to join your pathetic husband." The mention of my name ignited her fury. "Are you afraid to admit what you did to me in front of your new wife?" she sneered. Victoria, confused and terrified, turned to Julian. "What is she talking about?" Stripped of his power and wealth, Julian's charming facade crumbled. "It's none of your business." She's a lunatic, can't you see that? You never spoke to me like that before, Victoria cried out. Before Julian could respond, Clara threw a folder of photographs onto the floor. They were taken by the private investigator. Take a look, Victoria. The night before your wedding, he was in a club with his arms around 2 other women. He's never been a faithful man. You should probably get yourself tested. The photos were undeniable. Julian, we are getting a divorce. Victoria screamed. You have a sickness, you know that? Julian spat at Clara. You're obsessed with me. You think doing this will make me want you? Dream on. He never finished the sentence. A fruit knife from the kitchen was suddenly pressed against his throat. Say that again, Clara whispered, her voice like ice. He met her cold, hard gaze, and for the first time, he felt a sliver of fear. But his arrogance won out. I'll say it again. You're nothing. And your stupid husband. He gasped. Clara had plunged the knife deep into his chest. She slowly pulled it out, her face expressionless. You are not worthy of speaking my husband's name. Blood sprayed across the room. She didn't even flinch. As he bled out on the floor, she whispered my name, as if offering me a final tribute. Victoria, next to him, was paralyzed with shock. Clara had no quarrel with her. She simply turned and walked away. Victoria eventually escaped and reported Julian missing. A month later, hikers found his body, but with Victoria's testimony painting Clara as another of Julian's victims. The lack of evidence, and the help of a very good lawyer who argued for diminished responsibility due to extreme emotional distress, Clara faced no serious consequences. In the end, she bought a small house with a view of my grave. She lived out her days there, a solitary guardian of a love she finally understood but could never have again.